Did I? Oh, wait. What's going on?
We
Oh,
are live.
yay!
We're live.
Yay! Hangouts on Air is live. Thank you all for joining us here. 2019 winter season lineup, right?
Winner.
2018, 2019 is it's posted on some websites, but it's fresh new year. It's probably our last season before Google Plus disappears for us. We have to figure out a new way to get information out to everyone.
Yep.
Maybe I'll send a beeper message to everyone, so you have to get beepers now, so we can do this properly.
Do they manufacture those?
They
So,
do. One of the doctors at our hospital still uses a beeper.
Like, the difference between still uses and can buy new is
so please excuse if you see a lot of jumping in and out. One of my computers is having problems, but let's go ahead and get started with this. Thank you for joining us today with Albert, as always.
Happy New Year.
Jessica,
Hello.
Nick,
Yo.
and I just lost the call on this computer. Next up would be, who is it? Sean?
Sean. Hey.
And then last is me. So
And Jessica's cat.
This is Tilda.
the cat roommate.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so give me a second so I can at least pick this here so I can go to the next title. Our first topic of discussion is going to be the Shield Hero, because I'm the leader and I wanted to do this first. And it would have been Captain Tsubasa, but let's go ahead and go into
But
this.
nobody was watching it, so
Thanks to Albert, I now know it's referred to as the Shield Bros somewhere out there. Never heard of that before, but hopefully he can explain how it got that name. And other than that, let's go ahead and get started on this. This is one of the most anticipated shows I had for this season. And after watching the first 3 episodes, I finally came to a realization that I shouldn't be judging this based on the light novel or the web novels, because it's very different now up to the 3rd episode.
Is Shield Hero really a hero?
Yes, he
in the
is.
lore he
Actually.
is, yeah.
Depends on who you ask.
Doesn't he own
No, he's
slaves? Just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
This
Well,
is a
if he was
different.
as well received as the 3 other heroes, he wouldn't have to.
So, Shield Hero had a premiere. I think it was like 40 minutes, right?
Yeah,
So
it was
had
double length.
Mm-hmm.
I had a good start. I heard from friends and watched only at least one video on YouTube about the controversy about the first episode, and I guess a lot of remarks from some reviewers that were on Anime Network that were upset about it because of the supposed rape call and the thing that happened in that first episode. So that was very interesting. But other than that, like I said, I was expecting certain things to happen or certain feelings because of the book I've read. And since they weren't coming, and since I did see certain changes, I've decided to throw the light novel out and just go at it with a blank mind, and try to enjoy it for however way I can without trying to think of the light novel too much or the web novel, which I read, or the manga. And overall, episode 3 was great. I loved it. It was fun. The action scene was pretty amazing. But there's one thing that I don't think they're doing enough, and that's showing how much rage he has or how much he hates certain things, because that's like going to be a very big thing in the future, and I think they're kind of toning it down.
So it needs like a little mob psycho increasing gauge.
Yeah, maybe so. Yeah, like because he seems more mellow, especially in the second episode with him and his new companion, which is Rafita and or Raftilia, whatever you want to call it. And then there's certain things in the third episode I was somewhat expected them to showcase, but they didn't, which would be his rage when he meets Motoyasu again, and that scene afterwards when he leaves the Dragon Hourglass. So, but for people who haven't seen this or don't know about it, of course, four people are summoned into uh, this new world as the four. I think Crunchyroll calls them cardinal heroes, right? And the story focuses along the line of Naofumi, who happens to be the shield hero, and the other heroes are the spear, the sword, and the arrow, right?
Bow.
Or bow, yeah, bow. I'm sorry. I just keep on seeing Sean and I just leaving and going, so it's kind of weird. Um, and as they're going through and into this new world, they're told that there's a calamity coming in waves, and the first wave already went through, and since it was so hard on them and they're expecting it to be larger, they decided to summon the four heroes, and that they're to go out, level up, and get the strength needed to become able to fight these waves. And of course, with how things are playing out so far, nothing's going good for the Shield Hero. It seems like everything's getting in his way, and things are just happening. And he's getting very upset. He wants to go home. He just wants to get things done now, just to get out of there as fast as he can. At least that's how far we've gotten through the third episode. And of course, like I said, the controversy where he was accused of raping a companion, the venture that went by the name of Mine. And it led to a lot of people looking down on him and not wanting to help him at all. So, is there anything else you guys want to add?
Sure.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go. All right. So, this series, like Tank mentioned, is based on originally a web novel that got picked up, so it's an actual published light novel series, and now there's also a manga adaptation. However, I only read the manga, so I was quite surprised at a number of differences between the anime and the manga, although I figured that they would go back to the light novel source. But it sounds like what you're saying is that even there's differences from the light novel. So it looks like they're blending everything and trying to make it more anime friendly. And that is kind of what the impression I got watching it, because there are scenes that depict Naofumi, our shield hero, in a more positive light. Especially in the third episode, I noticed that quite a bit. And I don't know if that's, really a good thing to do, because part of the attraction for this series initially was that, instead of these OP characters being summoned to a different world to, the typical isekai genre, right? That here he has to start out from the very bottom, and on top of which he's been played for, and everyone has kind of turned against him. So, how do you become heroic when you're treated as the villain, right? So that was the interesting twist. but there are, I think, typical isekai issues, and I think this has to do with how some of these authors come across the fantasy genre, right? And it's I'm going to put this out that, you know, when I'm older than you guys, and when I grew up on fantasy, I was reading like Lord of the Rings, Earthsea trilogy, other classic, you know, fantasies, and newer ones after that. And then when in high school, no, in junior high, I started playing Dungeons and Dragons. So the RPG side came after the fact that I already had started on fantasy novels, right? So these adaptations that keep talking about leveling and stats, you know, in a non-parody way, like serious, like this is how the world works, it just feels kind of dumb to me, because that's not how I want the isekai, the fantasy world, to be treated as, you know, like a game. But then I realized that a lot of these, you know, light novel authors that are putting out volumes in Japan, they probably don't have that background, right? So what they know of fantasy, they learned from RPG games, specifically JRPG video games, where there are levels, there are stat bumps, there are equipment drops. And if that's all that you knew, and you started to write a novel about fantasy world, right? That's kind of what you would start writing about, leveling and grinding and all that. And so therein lies the problem for you know, audiences, especially in the West, I think, who have read the source materials and understand more about these fantasy worlds. And when they start talking about leveling, people just start tuning out. And I find that to be a problem still in shows like this. So that's something I just wanted to bring up, that if all the fantasy you knew came from a JRPG game, then this is what you get, right? So I think that's a slight problem for it to have a wider appeal. Not saying that it's good or bad. That's just the way these authors are writing things. So
That's a really neat way of parsing that. I never thought of it that way before. I think you're onto something there, definitely.
Yeah, I've been feeling that more and more often, especially when you watch really bad shows like Death March, right? It just seems like the idea behind what a fantasy world should be doesn't come from classic lit, you know, and it's coming from just games.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, because I got my toes wet in the fantasy genre by reading novels, and I do not like the levels, the mechanic emphasis on a lot of these. My husband, however, got his start in fantasy with video games, and he absolutely loves all of that nitty-gritty leveling, mechanics, stat stuff. So, yeah.
I think it's also just like a convenient way in meta to convey like differences in strength and progressment. Because like if you didn't have levels to rely on, it's kind of hard to quantify how much stronger you get throughout the series. But like the convenient thing about levels is that's what they do. Like I am this level now, I can do this stuff. But
it's shorthand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand that. Interesting. I think later on in this story and the Shield Hero story, where they start talking about levels, and they're like, wait, you're the same level as I am, but yeah, I'm so much more better at this than you. Why is that? So I think there's some interesting elements that come into play later. I'm just not sure at this point, you know,
what they'll do. Yeah, I don't have any of the written or the media to go off of. I'm an anime only.
Yeah, and obviously, other than that, I am watching it. I'm just not sure about some of the adaptation choices that they've made. The animation is solid. It is by Studio Kinema Citrus, who did Made in Abyss. So, they have a solid background. However, they also did do, what was it last season, Sean? The girl Review Starlight, which had some Sakuga problems towards the end there. So, but Shield Hero is set for 2 cores. I'm not sure how much they're going to adapt, but it is originally set for 2 cores, and they're clearly putting a lot of effort into this. So, and then the other thing I just wanted to mention was, weird. I think my screen just froze. Hold on a second. Yeah. Okay, great. It's not responding. Can you guys still hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine.
Well, that might have to wait because it's not Chrome is not responding.
So maybe it's not me that's only having a problem.
I don't think Chrome agrees with you, Albert. I think it's calling you out. No, I'm just kidding. Just kidding. What up?
No, go ahead.
As I said, I'm only viewing the anime. I don't have any other media to go off of. And I can say that while I am a pretty big fan of a lot of these isekai game worlds, not wanting to delve into the backgrounds here. One of the things that I did kind of like about this one is the parallels that it drew to like where all the heroes kind of come from, because it's revealed first off in like the first episode that they're not all from like the same Japan. It's a very similar but slightly different Japan. And in the other worlds that the 3 heroes come from, it's like a game to them. But our main character came in through basically a book. So not only is he like the most unpopular class, he also is not used to this thing as a game. He was like reading it as a book. He has that further kind of problem. He just kind of gets the short end of a stick on a lot of the stuff. And I don't know if that's supposed to be a hook mechanic or not, but when it comes to like the origin story of how you got there from, your other world, I found it to be kind of interesting. And I don't know much about the controversy because I haven't been looking on social media news outlets, but to me, like, I don't find much controversial. Like, sure, it would be controversial if you thought of it as like a modern day story that actually happened. I mean, you're kind of introduced right away into episode 1. The girl literally kind of tells them that the society that they're in kind of favors women. And like he even made like another remark about genuinely the age a lot of people seem into in that world is a lot younger than he's used to. So like they are drawing like distinct differences from the current world. And like with that in place, it kind of, I'm not to say like it should be an excuse or forgivable or anything, because I'm not saying that they've done anything super bad, like worthy of the controversy that supposedly the series has achieved. It's just, it's set in a fictional world. Fictional stuff has to happen, so I'm not holding it against it. But I would be interested in knowing, and if you guys do proceed in watching it, like how much it like was really adapted from the work instead of like being pretty spot on. Like I would like to know like a lot of the differences that the anime came up with. But
well, the novels, the prose is pretty bad. It's honestly one of the most poorly written light novels that I have read. I am not as well read in light novels as Tank is, though, so maybe there's another one out there that's worse. And the narrative tends to grind to a complete halt every time he learns a new skill or puts something into his shield. And so I really like the way the anime's tackling that, where it's just a pop-up that just goes, he leveled up, and it doesn't dwell on it. It doesn't talk about the stats.
It gives you a glimpse of this tree, but
yeah. Whereas in the book, it'll be a couple of pages of just this shield unlocked, plus this to that stat, poison resistance, and that's just, it's a pain in the butt. But they're glossing over a lot of what makes the whole novel tick, and that is that Naofumi is completely despised and almost completely alone in this world, is that everyone hates his guts. And I don't think that that's coming across in the anime as strongly as it was in the original book.
Yeah, probably not.
So
I was gonna say that I had like an early like fan theory that while like a lot of the other heroes have like attack oriented skills, like he was more of like a generalized skill tree, like because you know he kind of does like the herbology stuff, and the shield really kind of morphs, and it correlates to like one of those as much as Albert will hate this reference, drawing a parallel to like the Death March, or not the Death March, the In Another World with the smartphone one, when the character starts kind of like mixing skills together to make new skills, that skill tree on that shield seems sheerly overwhelming. Like it seems there's a lot there. And the character's like, oh, this thing's pretty adaptable. I'm like, yeah, but like keeping track of all the little things it could do, and like the best one for the situation you are currently in would definitely kind of work better with characters who are very analytical and can you know just kind of, they know what their index of skills are, and they know what you almost need like a really good like physical understanding of the world, like physics, in order to use skills like that efficiently. And I just the person who wonders about like how they adapt games to fiction worlds in me is kind of going, is that like why the pro characters never liked the class, because it was just too like, not even the pros play this thing. It's a whole lot of
Nick, to tag on to what Jessica said earlier, like I did, like she mentioned, I did like that they're skipping a lot of info dump that they do in the books about shield growth and everything. But the thing that they've changed to me personally was that, especially with episode 2 when he gets Raphtalia, is that in the books it seemed he was more cold to her and wasn't so open to her at all. Like he did give her stuff and was better, give her medicine, and he did do all that stuff, but he didn't have that kind of heartwarming feeling that they kind of put in the anime. It was more or less that I need her just to live so that I can do what needs to be done.
Yeah, because like I'm the tank and I need someone who can do some damage.
She was a tool to him.
Like she just needs to fulfill her role.
And she was a tool. And he does say in I think the first episode that slaves aren't people. It's like, holy shit, man.
I think also another thing was that I think they left out, and I don't know if it was because of what was going on with the first episode, but one information that they left out was that why he chose her, because in the book and everything they mentioned that he chose Raphtalia because she was a woman, and he kind of was upset with women and wanted to have power over this girl or something like that because of what mine did.
Yeah, I mean, on one other hand, this might be me inserting, because I haven't read the book, but you also might like want someone like that in your party just so you're not like the inferior gender when it comes to political stuff.
But the other thing that also upset me was, like I said, in the third episode when he meets Motoyasu, the spear hero.
Yeah, the second time.
And also when he went to the armor guy. The armor guy, when they were trying to upgrade Naofumi's armor, they showed him some chainmail again. And he got super upset because it reminded him of the incident that happened.
I got you.
And then after he met Motoyasu, he got really angry and just went out to the fields with Raphtalia and just started punching balloons over and over just to get his anger out. And it just, it kind of glossed over that anger.
Like low-key always carries one on his person, like all times in City, but...
Well, also... They don't show his desperation as well either, is because the other reason why he bought Raphtalia is because he had no money.
Yeah, that's what I was.
And she was sick and young, and they thought she was gonna die. And so basically, she was the cheapest that he could get with what he had.
What I was like in line with what I was assuming. He threw all his money away, kind of a thing. So. And since they're not showing how desperate and how hated he was, they're also not playing up the rage and the anger that he felt. And that's kind of the whole point of the series is how you move on after a traumatic event happens. And it's just not going to have the dramatic weight that it does if they keep
glossing over that.
I get you.
So we'll see what happens, over the two cores and where the story. I don't really see a good point to end a two core, but maybe they'll go all the way past where the manga is and get to a light novel. Good point, but I don't have a good feel for where they're going to end it. So, because the light novel is a 20-volume series, I think it's still ongoing, right, Tank?
No, I think it stopped. Actually, I don't know about the light novel because I never read the light novel. I read the web novel.
Okay. So, yeah, we'll see. But looks like my screen sharing is back on. So that's Raftalia as when he first picks her up. And yeah, she's cute lolly, and everyone's well, for reasons in episode 3 that you'll find out. She becomes everyone's waifu. But I just found this little image, and it was hilarious, so I thought I'd just show it. Oh, it's not showing correctly. Come on. There, how's that?
That's good.
So, unfortunately, because of Google crashing on me, it's stuck on the camera on Nick's face, so no one can see that unless they look at the lower third or down there in the bottom. Huh? I didn't leave it there. It won't let me change it. I've been trying to change it forever. So,
it is changing in my screen.
Yeah,
mine too.
But in the YouTube video, it's not.
Yeah.
So, no, I wonder what'll happen if Nick rejoins. Will we just have a black video the whole time or something?
I didn't know on the YouTube it wasn't. You want me to try rejoining? I can do that.
Yeah, maybe when we transition into the next thing. Can I ask a serious question about Shield Hero?
Sure.
This is kind of the elephant in the room to me. I haven't, I've kind of skimmed around Shield Hero, but I haven't really watched any of it. I did see the synopsis, which begins with a false accusation of rape into buying a lowly cat girl slave. And my question is this speaking to a certain zeitgeist? Is this show toxic? Is this some anti-feminist MRA incel type fantasy world that confirms, that says the only good woman is one that you can own as a pet?
I think it might be, but I also think it might not be. When I first read the novel, I didn't really think much of the whole false rape accusation, because when you're reading, you can gloss over stuff, or you can put as much emphasis as you want on certain subjects. But when you transition to a visual medium, the director and the camera are emphasizing certain points. And I read the novel before all of the Me Too movement started. So when I watched the anime for the first time and I saw the false rape accusation, it made me very uncomfortable, and I did not like that was in the show as a plot point. So there might be something to it, and I understand why people are upset that has happened in this show. But because the story predated all of that, I'm not sure if it's just an unhappy coincidence that it seems to be in line with the MRA philosophy or not.
Or it's kind of I guess what I mean is, do you think this fantasy world is reactionary to women gaining more power?
No.
Does it create this nightmare world where women have the power and accuse men of rape and so on and so forth?
No, I don't think so, because first off, I believe the novelist is a woman.
Huh.
It is. The novelist is a woman.
The novelist is a woman, for one thing. And for a second thing, the reason why, so it's a matriarchy, right? But there's a king. And you go, well, that's not how a matriarchy works. And you find out, any spoiler, that the king has usurped power from his wife. And that was kind of the start of all of the bad things happening. So I think that at first glance, it doesn't look good. But the more you know about the world, the more it becomes less awful.
Yeah, because I was thinking that, like, if that were the case, they would not keep it to one isolated instance. Like, I would think you would see a society where, you know, with a lack of cameras, like, guys take extra precaution not to be accused of something, and it seems pretty like normal day on the streets. Like, I don't really think that to be the case. It's just, I think it was because the protagonist got accused. He's, again, not really popular. He's like the least respected class, and they're like, you know, we only because like your shield relic is technically needed for all this stuff. Like, otherwise you're like, they never really liked the class, it really seems. So it just kind of added on to that. Like, as far as the toxicity, as Jessica was saying, I get the hint that if he was always supposed to be angry and kind of ragey, he would come across with a little bit of a toxic story. But I think that's just to sell the story and not, I don't think, the views of any, like, the author, so to speak. Maybe. I don't know the author. Couldn't tell you.
Okay.
Also, she's not a cat girl. She's a
raccoon.
So let's go ahead and go on to the next title. So next up we have something.
Yep, that's the name.
Oh, here it is. Yakusoku no Neverland.
Okay, I'm just going to try to rejoin because I'm assuming, is it still stuck on me?
Or is it like...
It totally is.
Okay, I'm going to try coming right back.
All right.
So this is the island with kids and...
It's the island with kids. So this is a Shonen Jump manga turned Noitamina horror anime about kids growing up in an orphanage, and in the first episode spoilers, they find out that they're being raised as some sort of they're livestock in a farm, and they're going to be eaten by monsters or something. We just assume they're going to be eaten. We're not entirely sure. The monsters are raising humans on this farm, and they're going to do they harvest the kids, which will result in their deaths. The mechanics of which are kind of like cryptic but grisly. And so 3 of these kids find this out, and they realize that their number is up. Like, they're going to get harvested in a matter of months, and they need to come up with an escape plan. So it's pretty compelling. It's well animated. I think it has some really good moments. Like, I was really impressed by the first episode because, like, anime is such a stylized and abstract storytelling medium that it often doesn't evoke fear in me. But I was definitely on the edge of my seat at the end of episode 1. Like, it was a real hair raiser. But there are other times where the fact that it's a Shonen Jump thing, that it's basically made for children, starts to show. And, you know, I wish it was something more sophisticated like Shinsekai Yori. But so the ways in which that shows is that in sort of like children's stories, there's a lot less ambiguity. And it's like pretty clear cut, like, who are the good guys, who are the bad guys. And they even show you scenes of, like, the bad guys, you know, around their dinner table or something, the monsters being like, we're going to harvest these kids. And, you know, it's, I wish they didn't show that. I think it would be more interesting if if it was just like strictly zeroed in on the perspective of the children, and you only knew what they knew. And, you know, you didn't know exactly what the monsters look like. You didn't know what they talk about, you know, behind the scenes. You didn't get to see the administrators or the mothers of the orphanage, like, sort of conspire against each other and so on and so forth.
You know, like, on a interesting kind of parallel, I kind of shared that sentiment because I think that was like around episode 3, where episode 1 and 2, you know, 1 kind of introduced you to the world. when I watched 2, I noticed that there was like a large credit to Cygames just because I think they funded it. I don't think they have any kind of property invested in this, or I don't know, maybe they'll get rights to the character art or something. But
yeah, Cygames is pretty weird. It's like they're
like,
more the general media company now.
Right. But like when I saw that second episode, I was imagining this anime as like one of those like horror games where like, you know, the kids found out about something and they have to like rummage through the house to get supplies to escape, and you have to like be like, I'm like imagining this thing as a game. I'm like, this game would be downright creepy. Like, but then yeah, we saw the round table with the monsters, and it's like, okay, well that kind of breaks my. This was like a game mentality.
Yeah, there's like a level of immersion that's lost when they show too much of the bad guys, like talking amongst themselves and plotting against the kids. Like it was really immersive up to that point. But I'm still gonna watch it. It seems like a cool show.
Could be a good rule of horror is the less you show of the monster, the scarier it is.
Exactly.
Yeah, because it's like that. Not quite like anticipation, but just the sheer goosebumps that could cause, like as a pure horror title, is kind of crazy.
Yeah, and they show you the monsters in the first episode, but those are just like the truck drivers, and you know, that had me thinking, like, if those are just the truck drivers,
right? Yeah.
You know, what else is out there in this evil world?
That's kind of like what I was wondering, because they, in an episode, they talked about it, but they're like, yo, if we're basically on a farm, like what does not on the farm look like? What is the state of the world right now?
Yeah.
And that's that. I'm really interested to see its end just because of its premise. Like, and it seems like not necessarily a sheer battle of wits, but there's like a lot of questions, and it's like presenting you all the right questions. And I just wonder if they're going to present it in the, like, not the best way possible, but, you know, like in a way that maintains the show to be unique and pretty great.
They are kind of setting up this like Death Note-y conflict between, you know, smart kid and head mama, because they're both geniuses, but then in the first episode the kid was like, but I never beat her at chess or whatever. And you know, it's just like this strong foreshadowing of like, this is one's Yagami Light and the other one's L, and you know,
like hopefully they play their chess game better than in the Terror of Resonance. So that was a pretty bad chess game.
Yeah, I just hope it doesn't get too contrived with like them trying to outwit each other in more implausibly anime-y ways. It doesn't need to be Death Note.
I started reading the manga sort of in the middle of the story, so I haven't actually seen the beginning and what has been animated so far. So all of this is new content to me, but it didn't really feel that way to me in the manga where I was. Mom was kind of this sinister presence that felt so far above what the kids were capable of that I didn't really feel that they were on the same level. So they really had to work to outwit her. Whether or not they keep that up with the anime remains to be seen. But I will say that this definitely feels like a very bingeable series to me. Because a lot of times I watch an episode and it's just, oh, okay, wait till next week, that's fine. But on this one, even though I know where the story's heading, I want to see more. And I have to wonder if that's because of the emphasis on time. That there's all of these clocks in the background and stopwatches and people looking at clocks and talking about clocks. And they're definitely on a timetable where they have to get this plan to get not only themselves, but everyone else out of that area before the harvest happens.
Yes, it's definitely a motif there.
Mm-hmm.
This show has been pretty fun for me. I do like the sense of the fear in them that they showcase, like when they're trying to fool mother, like in that whole scene in the hallway with the picture and the girl and the boys are on the corner worried if what's going to happen. So that they do have a lot of tension that's, I think that they did a really good job at pulling. And but other than that, it kind of upset me some places. I'm like, it's not like a big thing. It's just like they just barely go around the corner and they're talking really loud. I'm like, can't you hear you guys talking? But other than that, I found it really interesting, and excited to see how it goes. But I think I'm with Jessica that I might want to wait until we get to 9 episodes before I start picking it up again, and just watch a group of it rather than watch it week by week, so that everything seems fresh and goes on, and I don't have that fall of the tension that happens with every week.
Yeah, it might not be the worst idea just to wait for a bunch of episodes and binge it. To get a sense of pacing, I looked into synopses of the manga, and it sounds like they don't actually leave the orphanage until chapter 35 or so. So it makes me wonder, like, is this whole season going to be them coming up with the plan to leave the orphanage and then executing it at the end? And then we finally get to the outside world, but then it's over. Actually, I actually don't know how long the show runs.
12 episodes?
12? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Encore 12.
So I've curbed my expectations for seeing the outside world anytime soon. Because, just from after I saw the first episode, I'm like, oh, they're going to escape by episode 3, and then it's going to be a grand adventure. No, that's not. It's probably not what it's going to be.
So there was actually one thing that now that occurs to me that did bug me. And because from what I've seen around the house and inside the house, it's very plain. A lot of old-fashioned things, but it seemed that they knew a lot about technical things, these like high gadget gears. In some scenes where they were talking about certain things, and I'm like, where would they get the knowledge of that? Didn't seem like they had anything in the house.
Could be introduced through their testing. Who knows?
Yeah,
I was really interested by their testing scene where they would like scan the barcode like with a pen and like I guess get the audio feedback on the questioner. So I have no clue how that was going on, but
yeah, now that you mention it, I don't have a great sense of like what the kids know and when this takes place. I thought someone in the 3rd episode referenced 2019.
Well, yeah, they compared technology of a certain era, but they actually kind of acknowledge that they don't know what technology exists now, and that's actually something that kind of piqued my interest too, because I was kind of like wondering, if you're running a orphanage and you are the administrator, and a leak like this got out that could put your livestock at risk. It just seems like as high tech, like with all the options available, as far as like saying potentially putting transmitters in kids, how can you not like just have the whole house bugged and then that'd be that? Because like there almost seems like a lack of like management from like the monster side here, because even if let's just say the orphanage head, the mom as they're called, is pure human, like from a business perspective, there's so many ways you could be like overbearing and micromanaged that it just seems crazy that they would rely on the word of the head of household instead of just having like microphones everywhere and video feeds and just knowing what's going on, because most businesses do that within their premise. That was kind of my only thing.
Well, depending on how much information you guys want, I guess I could just say that it is explained later on, the stranglehold on the information that the kids have and why the orphanage is run the way it is. So that does come out later, and it is explained, and there's a reason for it.
Oh, okay.
All right. Are we ready to go to the next title, or does anyone have anything else to say about this?
Yeah.
So next up is Do-da-da-da. Or no, Do-da-da-da-da.
That was a different show with a stop sign people really liked.
Which is on Amazon Prime. One of the... What was it? I think there's only 2 or 3 titles on Amazon Prime.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the other one.
So let me tell you, when I first went to go watch this on Amazon Prime, they forgot to upload the subtitles.
Really?
It was unsubtitled for like 8 hours or something on Amazon Prime, and everyone was leaving these 1-star reviews. It was pretty hilarious. So
Amazon.
I went on torrents and downloaded the Amazon web rip, which did have subtitles on it. I don't know how they got a hold of that, but That's how I had to watch it at the time.
Interesting. Yeah. So to start off, Dororo is originally a manga written by the god of manga himself, Osamu Tezuka, back in the 60s. Okay. And it has been adapted. So what you see, I think, is one of the first chapter covers. Is my screen? Can you guys see my screen share?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well,
We can see it on YouTube. It's still stuck on Nick. But...
yeah, it's still stuck on Nick. It's weird.
Okay. So it has been previously adapted for TV as a anime. This was back in late 1960s. So shortly after, I think it was after the manga concluded. The manga itself is only 4 volumes, and Dororo is the name of the little kid, the thief kid, and the actual swordsman is Shakimaru, right? So I don't think I've seen the original. I might have seen like clips and bits and pieces, but I don't remember seeing the entirety. And I have read the manga before, so I was curious to see how they were going to adapt this for a more modern audience. And so far, I'm really actually enjoying it. It's pretty solid. So the animation studio this time around is MAPPA with help from Tezuka Productions, which is the company that Osamu Tezuka founded. So he's credited as the creator and the company. So, and then in terms of the cast, not cast, staff, the director is Kazuhiro Furuhashi. And he's done, he's done some other things. More recently, I think he was the director for Gundam Unicorn, and he's done other things, but nothing that really stands out.
Well, I think notably and like relevant to Dororo is that he's done some shonen anime, including Rurouni Kenshin. So when I first heard about this anime, I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense on paper that they would get Furuhashi to do this.
I see. Okay. Yeah. And so let's see. And then the main writer of this adaptation is Yasuko Kobayashi. And she's got a pretty extensive series composer title for this one, for season 3 of Attack on Titan, Kakegurui. She's currently also doing JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Golden Wind. So, she knows how to write action shows, I think. And the aesthetic, the design aesthetic, I really enjoy quite a bit. I think they made the right changes. And currently, we're up to episode 3, but Hyakimaru has not said a word because he can't. And that's kind of an interesting way to have one of your 2 protagonists be completely, not able to speak, right? So everything else has to be shown through the animation and the animators. And I think they're doing a really good job. All the story elements that they've changed. So if you haven't watched this is set in the Warring States, the Sengoku era in Japan, where all these, you would call them warlords, but all these smaller countries existed, and they're fighting each other to gain territory and to reign supreme. And one of these warlords promises these demons, 48 demons, anything that he could give so that he can advance, he could reign supreme. And the demons take his child as payment, specifically just parts of his child, right? So it's a pretty gruesome story, but they've changed some of those elements. They reduced the number of demons, and we'll see what happens, because it's not just about, the story is not just about him regaining his humanity through the killing of demons. There's also the whole thing about, well, why is the world so crappy? Why do peasants get killed? Why are there constant wars? Why is there famine? And turns out Dororo's dad is a rebel leader. Spoilers. So you'll find out. I'm really curious to see how they adapt the story. And here's some more character. That's Hyakimaru and Dororo. I think this is pretty early on. So Hyakimaru's face looks weirdly toned because it's not really his face. It's a mask. The design aesthetics, in the manga, it just looks like he has swords stuck in his arm. But this one makes it so that it's a little bit more reasonable that he has reach and he's able to bend his elbows. Otherwise, it wouldn't make any sense. And here's Hyakimaru as a little baby. Has no skin, no eyes, no nose, no arms, no legs. Pretty gruesome. So overall, I'm very pleased so far. I'm really curious. This is one of my, high up on the watch list. So I've been watching each episode as it comes out and really enjoying it.
It's also high up on my watch list too. I like the new aesthetic. I think it was a good decision to update the character designs to look more modern and in keeping. And the writing's pretty strong. I was afraid that Dororo as a character was going to be just this irritating child sidekick that doesn't shut up, but he's actually kind of cute and not irritating. So that's nice. And yeah. I'm looking to see how this whole story will unfold.
He's also written to be Dororo is written to be a little bit more sympathetic from the get-go, because in the original he's in the manga, at least, he's very annoying. He also sees that Hyakimaru has these great looking swords in his arms, and his whole purpose initially is to kind of scam Hyakimaru and perhaps get the swords and sell it, or perhaps basically using him, to get rid of anything that might come in his way, right? So he's a scam artist and a thief and a conniving con boy, and you'll find out more about his backstory later, I think, because it should come into play.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty sold into watching it. I have been enjoying the story thus far. I will probably watch it through. I'm not sure if it's going to make it into my tops, just because I kind of get like a little lost with like the historic pieces, even though this one's like not pure history. There's a lot of fantasy blended in. I think what honestly kind of convinced me, as bad as this is going to sound, to just give it like the shot that it deserved was that OP sequence.
Yeah, I think the animation in the OP is nice. I personally don't like the song. I think it clashes with the aesthetics, but whatever. A lot of people are saying this is one of the best OP for this season. So
probably just at the style level. Yeah, I don't know if there's been a few that catch me at the music level, but at the visuals, this one I think is the clear kind of winner of the season.
I also recall the ending being pretty cool too.
Yeah, and one other backstory is that at the time, Tezuka obviously had other contemporaries who were writing manga, right? And there was a slight, at this time, I believe, a yokai boom. So people are writing, just like there's an isekai boom right now. People are writing about yokai and monsters, and I read somewhere that basically, Tezuka was saying, well, hell, I can do that too. And this is the result of that. So it was kind of like him being spurned, or his jealousy towards some other successful yokai artists, mangaka, that he wanted to prove that he could write a yokai story too. So I thought that was an interesting side note.
Didn't this manga get canceled? It was never finished?
I don't know if it was intended or not, but the original manga ends, in 4 volumes without a conclusive end to the story of, specifically of one of the characters. So it's a little left open-ended, but there are stories like that where that the initial focus is no longer the important point of the the goal doesn't become the journey, or the journey changes them to such that their initial goal is supplanted by other things. So I don't know. I'm not too sure about whether it was canceled or not. I guess I could look it up, but anyway, we can move on ahead.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on to the next title. I don't even know why I'm still changing these title cards, but it's Egao no Daika. What was the Crunchyroll title?
The Price of
Smiles.
The Price of Smiles.
Apparently somewhere else it was also caused like the cost of, as opposed to price, but I don't know. I don't know what service used that.
Yeah. I only saw the first episode and then I was like, I'll try something else. She's too optimistic. So who wants to take it? Is it Jessica or Nick?
I didn't put a number on it. I'm watching it, but I didn't put a number on it.
Oh gosh. I'm not really good at these summaries, so if someone else wants to take it, that's fine.
Yeah, sure. I could do it.
It's the end of the world. I'm just kidding.
Yeah, so Egao no Daika, or Price of Smiles, or Cost of Smiles, or whatever you want to call it, is the 55th anniversary of Tatsunoko production, right? So Tatsunoko is a huge studio, and they this is their anniversary celebration anime that they're doing.
So is this cooler than their other one, Karis? Is this cooler than Karis, or not as cool as Karis? That's what I want to know.
I haven't watched the other one. So
okay.
Yeah, so this is a little bit questionable, I've got to say. So I went into it just to check it out, and kind of was immediately turned off because the boy there, the blonde-haired boy, is voiced by Matsuoka, of Kirito fame. So all I could hear is Kirito voice coming straight out of yet another character. I'm like, God damn it.
I did not know that. That's funny.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious, or I don't know, what was the other guy in Danmachi? Anyway, he's got the same voice. So yeah, so basically this is set on a planet where they're former Earth people, right? They've immigrated to this planet, and 2 major powers exist. And one is the Soleil kingdom, of which the princess that you see there in the center is a 12-year-old. So, it's the check mark Lolly, right? Cute little princess, check. But she is also an orphan because her parents, the king and the queen, died in a gigantic accident explosion, check mark, right? And her Osana Najimi, her childhood friend, is the Joshua, Joseph, or whatever you want to say, the guy voiced by Matsuoka to the right. So, okay, fairly generic. And the other power is a empire that they've been at peace with, but clearly that's not going to last. So episode 1, you're basically introduced to the premise, right? And through some new characters that get introduced, there is a slight to the princess that her, Joshua doesn't take too kindly to, and challenges to them to a fight. And that's where we get into the CG mecha fight. And the CG mecha is meh. it's not that interesting, really, because there are no stakes. It's a mock battle in a virtual reality simulator, right? So they're not even fighting in their real mechs. So it's just pride is on the line, but there's no cost and no price and no nothing. So I'm like, oh, great. This is just, Tatsunoko wanting to show how they can do CG. And all right, it looks nice enough, but it's nothing outstanding. The design doesn't look that great to me. And the episode ends, of course, with the princess helping out Joshua. So they win and gain the respect of the other newcomers. And Joshua gets shipped off along with the others to the frontier, or the border lands between them and the Empire. But you find out in episode 2 that, unbeknownst to the princess, who's been kept in the dark, I don't know how you do that when she's technically the leader of the country.
Writing. That's how you do it.
That the non-aggression pact has been broken and the Empire is advancing on them. So that's the basis of the story, you think, right? But that's not actually where they're going with it, because on the Empire side in episode 3, you're introduced to one of their pilots, operatives, whatever you want to call her. And she is voiced by popular VA Saori Hayami, and she is the other protagonist. And you're like, wait a minute, what do you mean she's the other protagonist? What happened to Matsuoka? And Matsuoka voiced Joshua. Well, you find out in episode 2 something happens to him. So I'll leave it at that. So that's an interesting twist, but that's not enough to really keep me interested in this. I watched the full 3 episodes and I'm like, this 12 episode series sounds really generic and not that good.
Mm-hmm.
What's holding me back from liking this, well, there's a lot of things, but the main thing is that the writing is terrible. There are huge sections of the episodes that are just long info dumps, and I kid you not, they even do the no-no of, as you know, we rely on blah, 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 blah. And so the characters are spouting this stuff that they have no reason to do. There's another scene where an attendant leans over and whispers to a person that should know, that's the Lord that we've all, that we're serving. He's our boss. Just to let the viewer know that who this character is. And if the writing had been a little better, or if they trickled out the information about the world, made it more mysterious, I think we could get a lot more miles out of this than we normally could. Because there are some good ideas here to work with, but it's mired in some of the worst scripting I've seen in the last year. So I'm going to stick with it because, again, there are some interesting themes that they have about these two people from opposite sides of a conflict coming together. That's initially why I was excited about this one. But the execution has just been terrible. And the animation gets off model pretty quickly, which is not a good sign this early into a run. So I couldn't say that this is a must-watch unless you're morbidly curious.
Yeah, I was pretty much on the verge of dropping it by like episode 1 as well. I think I continued in, and I was kind of like, I might just try to watch this thing to kind of see where it's going. One of the things that I'm personally like early confused about is during that mock battle that Albert was talking about, we do kind of see the princess interject and kind of like affect the virtual field's topology to like, use strategy in her favor. And apparently, like, when two pilots are fighting, all they're really doing is fighting, and they're not like taking like, classic battles like topology and how I could morph that to my advantage. Like from wars of yesteryear or even present year. But so I was kind of intrigued that might be the gimmick. There was going to be strategy, stuff like that was going to be part of the anime. And then episode 2 kind of hit, and I was like, okay. And then 3, it kind of stands counter to what it established in episode 1, because our naive princess is so fixated on wanting none of her people to die, which is, on its own right admirable. She's kind of going against common sense orders of her own military, who are saying, no, we can't do this. It's going to result in casualties. But there's casualties that are going to happen. Yeah, we're saying there's going to be more. So they try to kind of cave to her, strategy at that point, and that's I think where it's establishing its drama. But it's like, I can't tell the gimmick of this thing yet. Like, I'm like, what? I don't know yeah.
It's all over the place thematically, because it kind of starts off with this. Okay, this is going to be a coming of age tale.
Kind of, yeah.
Princess Yuki's going to learn how to become head of state, and nope, we're not doing that. We're going to do the horrors of war and the toll it takes on average everyday citizens, and what soldiers have to do. No, we're not going to do that. So I'm thinking that they're going to try and bring Yukihime, and is it Lily? What's the other girl's name?
Yeah.
The Deuterogenous. Is it Lily?
Yeah.
I'm thinking that they're going to somehow have these two meet, and it's going to be their ideologies at war. But considering that we've jumped themes with every single episode in this series, I could be just completely wrong.
It's hard to say where it's going yet.
Is that with all of the information just dumped on you when you have absolutely no context of the world, it's really hard to remember. Or maybe I'm just getting old and I have a hard time remembering stuff anyways, but I couldn't tell you more than two of the characters' names, what the energy crystal thing is or why it's important. None of that stuff, because it's just thrown at you all in one point, and then we never talk about it again. I'm pretty disappointed with this one, actually. But I'm going to keep watching it so you guys don't have to.
That's usually what I do.
So my instincts at episode 1 were good.
Yeah.
They were decent enough, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm already kind of asking myself, like, do I watch this or do I drop it, I can usually kind of tell that at that point, normally, like, no one else is watching it.
Yeah.
Like, that's how low my bar is in comparison to everyone else's. And
I'm going to have to be on the same page as Albert. I didn't know who was voice acting him, but I did find Joshua really annoying. now I know the voice actor, now I probably know why. But let's go ahead and move on to the next title. Let's go ahead and forget Smiles and go to Magical Girls.
Go to like PTSD. That's the next place you go.
Maho Shoujo Tokushunsen Asuka. Did I say that right?
I believe so.
Tokushusen, I believe. I don't know if that's what you said or not. Asuka, yeah.
Dude, I'm gonna buy myself a cake for that.
Make sure it's of the cheese variety.
No, chocolate.
They make chocolate cheesecake.
But chocolate cake with chocolate frosting.
Anyway. I don't know. Let's see.
So, this show, what is it? It's basically starts at the end of a large conflict, right? They defeated the main enemy.
Yeah.
Several years passed.
I would start with an early synopsis, but did you have like images you already had set aside for this one to be like a better precursor, or no?
Oh, we can't even share images half the time. We can't control the camera.
Yeah, I don't have any screenshots of this one.
Okay, so Maho Shoujo, the Magical Girl Special Ops Asuka, as it's being called in English, kind of sounds almost exactly what its title is trying to convey. In the synopsis, you come to find out that at one point the world was invaded by a parallel dimension. Not like quite space alien invaders, but evil like demon entities that usually took the form of kind of like gothic teddy bear kind of art stuff. And you know, at first humanity was fighting these things and it was a losing battle, but then they came into contact with the spirit realm, and like I guess using a mix, a synchronization between spiritual beings and our normal humans, we got magical girls. And these magical girls fought a big war. And I mean, it's kind of funny how this war kind of went down, because it really drew it to a modern depressing parallel. There was at one point where a character went home while fighting this war, and like part of the opposite side of who they were fighting was like at her house, and like was mafia style, basically, let's just say killing her parents. So
a little at a time.
Huh?
A little at a time.
Yeah, a little at a time. So you kind of get this very heavy kind of like, you know, not your normal type of combat from a magical girl anime kind of establishment. But we come to find out that war is past, it's been won, and this is kind of the aftermath of when you still have that magical girl power left over. What do you do with it in society where the war is supposed to be over? You kind of see a lot of the backstories of like what other characters fell into, and some of, as I mentioned, like the PTSD that our main protagonist carries with her from literally fighting in somewhat, you know, horrific conditions. They didn't really convey every little thing, but they didn't really have to. And it's kind of revealed as again that there's kind of a black market at hand for like how the war initially started with this other realm entity. There are still some entities that are slipping in through to reality, and they're basically like privatized black market selling a lot of the stuff that the magical girls fought in the big war, and they're trying to start a small scale, even worse war. And you know, it's kind of interesting to see how these girls blended in like with the military, and how they try to lead more normal lives outside. When the war was supposed to be done, they should be able to go back to their normal lives. It just kind of depicts this in a way that I've never seen it depicted before, especially with, you know, the tag of magical girl. So that kind of really drew my interest, and I'm probably going to, you know, give it a shot all the way through. I think a lot of people will find it somewhat interesting for that reason, although it might not be the, you know, the title, the best animation title from the season. To me, it's one of the more unique ones.
Mm-hmm. I'm a sucker for the dark magical girl genre, despite it only containing one decent or really good one, Madoka. But I like the magical girls with PTSD conceit in this. I think that's a really neat angle to approach this from, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes. Has anybody here read the manga, and if so, is it worth picking up?
I have not.
I have not.
I have not. So the only thing that shocked me was that I think they were supposed to be in middle school when it all started, or in that big bat fight, and they didn't look like middle schoolers at all. Now they're just in high school. So this show's really hard to tell their ages.
Have you seen middle schoolers these days? Have you not gone out to
Albert? Why are you going out and looking at middle schoolers, Albert?
Exactly. In kind of a maid outfit. So I found some screenshots. That's cover for #1 volume of the manga, and then oh boy. Okay, never mind. I guess that froze too.
Oh no.
Yeah, so like that was one of the somewhat interesting things about this show, was a lot of these girls are depicted as veterans despite being in high school, because they had some level of military training because they worked directly with the military. So you'll see like alongside the magical girl, there's like another large overtone of military grade weaponry that is present throughout the series. So it's a very mixed military magical girl story, and I can't say that I've seen one like this heavy, like themed, not, you know, that no other show has had some type of magical girl with some type of military depicted. but nothing's coming off the top of my head, and I'm generally interested in the story.
Mm-hmm.
Like these veteran high schoolers who are fighting the good fight, trying to keep humanity safe while having like inner conflict with. There's even like a character who kind of literally says this at some point. Our main protagonist, Asuka, she wants the war to be over with. She wants to get out of the magical girl lifestyle and just go back to being a normal high schooler. However, as she's fighting, there's and that's like another interesting point of this show was outside of the magical beings still being left in the background and having kind of like a subplot secondary war coming about that way. I didn't think it was going that way by episode 2. I just thought it was going to be like, the aftermath of being a magical girl while fighting this war. And she was kind of like talking to like a high level military individual about like what some of the other magical girl agents kind of went on to do, or what they were active doing now, or if they are still working with the military or not, and how a single magic girl can subside a terrorist event. Like that was a really interesting perspective, and it's just kind of interesting because, well, not interesting, but I kind of share the mentality that another character had at one point. I'm sure like a lot of the viewers do, that while our protagonist wants to be done with fighting because she kind of has PTSD and it's pretty much a very hectic lifestyle where it's kind of hard to always worry about the people you care about and being able to save them, since you have the power to do so, and if you fail, it's kind of all on you. But I think it's by episode 3 that we literally see a quote come out that she wants to enjoy her life and her friends, and she wants to be done with the fighting. And like one of her friends basically says, but that's what you fight to protect if you can. Like, not to her face, but it's like, and if it comes down to it, I just don't know what the mentality of the main protagonist seems like it's going to be challenged early on in this series with the reoccurrence of the war. So I think that's somewhat of a theme of the show, but I'm not sure if it's going to be the whole theme.
Yeah, we'll see. So the picture, if you can see it, is the 5 veteran girls that won the war.
Out of like the 11 or something?
It was 12.
I thought there were 9.
Yeah, it was I think 9 or something like that. Anyway, you got the maid, the nurse, the cheerleader, I guess. The American one's the cheerleader. The Chinese girl, obviously, Chinese outfit, right? Hot. And then the total military one, who's Russian, I think. So that about says it. I think there's a girl that joins later on, from what I remember, that her outfit looks like a swimsuit. So if it hits all the fetishes for the people.
Yeah, like because in one of the episodes they literally said there are new illegal magical girls, like not government authorized ones.
So pick your waifu.
All right, let's go ahead and before I move on, I'll just say this show is pretty raw because they show a lot of blood compared to a lot of other magical girl shows. So beware of that. But other than that, let's go and move on to the next title. The next title we have up is, I think this is it, Endro. Or let me see here. Yeah, Endro. So this is a title I picked up last minute, and I'm having a hoot with it. It's so awesome. So what was it? Albert was talking about how you get your fantasy from JRPGs and all that stuff, and Endoro just seems to be a show that just takes all those tropes and turns it around and just tries to twist it in ways that you wouldn't think and makes fun of it in different ways. So I actually got faked out by it because I put it on to play and it started they defeat the enemy, and it's like the end, and they start playing the credits. I'm like, what was this a short? And then I look, and it's a full episode. So it actually got me, and I'm like, oh, you tricked me. So
pretty good troll.
So it continues on, and you find out that it did some kind of like time travel back, and this is now the beginning of them starting their journey into training.
The finishing spell that you thought ended it all misfired, and it did something else.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that are going on that are just hilarious. Like the main girl, the Yusha, as they call her, the hero. She ends up becoming classless because there's no demon lord. So, and then they do a lot of jokes with that at the beginning. Like when she summons her weapon, it's just a club because she has no class. I thought that was hilarious. They just do a lot of different jokes and that all throughout the whole series that just make fun of different things. And if you're a fan of RPGs, I believe you'll enjoy a lot of the tropes that they put in. Of course, you got the lolly teacher now fit into this show. So they also have that. The only thing that bothers me every time I look at the Yusha, I'm like, her outfit looks like she's just wearing a nightgown. She's about to go to sleep half the time. And but she's bright, energetic, and everyone's got their traits. Yusha's kind of like an airhead, but with high luck, and so everything tends to go her way in some magical way. You got the elf girl that for some reason has this large hammer, but she's the more straightforward type. But of course, she has these weird sense of cuteness, I would say. The next girl's this. Is she a cat ear or cat girl?
The fighter one, I'm not sure.
Yeah, she's a fighter. And then you got the magic girl who's like obsessed with these cards that they use for magic, and they're always just doing some dumb things. Like they even go on quest, and like one of their first quests is like find a cat, and they're like, oh, okay.
And their next 5 quests were like find a cat.
Yeah, and the whole funny thing was even the elf girl's like, we should have stopped at 3, but they ended up drawing until they got 5. And then they're like, we're professional cat adventures now. Let's do this. Let's get our next cat adventure. And then they get the super difficult quest, and they're like, oh, okay.
And then they go find a cat anyway. That's actually something that I was going to say about the show is, while I am enjoying it, I almost get mad at it for being like too much of a moe blob, because I do like the humor when it's getting to the humor, but the moe blobness gets a little lost on me. So
I think that's mainly in the beginning, right? It's not so much in the end, or
it's kind of present throughout. Like whenever they're like at home talking at night about like not too many super RPG comedic kind of stuff, but I do like it as a comedy. One of the banters that I don't mind to kind of like draw a parallel to is when they're trying to give more dialogue to the Mao character, who's the demon teacher Lolly. How she kind of has this personality such to she wants to stop this group's adventures early in their tracks, because then she could go on to be a successful demon lord. She's always kind of losing sight of this and ends up kind of helping them along their journey. But like she has this like duality of, I'm going to fairly try to stand in their way, and like her dialogue while she's doing so is just something that moe blob I don't mind. But like when they're just kind of like chatting and they're not playing up the RPG humor, I get a little bit kind of bored with the show, but not like in a bad way. Just what I know what it could be doing instead.
Yeah, but those scenes are just like a minute or 2. They're not super long. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I would almost recommend it to some people just for the comedy alone, because a lot of people have at least played a few RPGs and can relate to some of the stuff that happens. And which is hilarious. Like they even meet this guy in front of the tower, and he's like, "This is the tower," blah blah blah, and then they walk past. It's like, why is he out there, just standing there, giving people information? It just made me laugh, but it's great.
And I kind of like going in that same vein of humor to kind of ruin the joke as you guys go on to watch it or not. As the guy's like, oh yeah, I seen this thing that you're looking for. It's at the top of the tower. They go in and they see like all these monster eyes glaring at them and traps all over the place. And like one of them goes, do you think this is actually going to be like hard? And someone goes, well, if the guy outside been up there, it shouldn't be too bad. He's been up there. So like moments like that's when I like the show. And it's not that I dislike the show, it's just I wish it was more of the comedy, a little more toned down on the moe blobness. Not saying that to do away with it entirely, just I like it for the comedy. So I kind of want there to be more comedy.
Yeah. So I highly recommend it if you want to laugh. But other than that, I would say let's just go into the next title because it's just something you have to see. There's not much to talk about. It's pretty almost episodic, I would say. You can just pick it up and just have fun with it without really having to know the whole story, I would say. Next up, what was it? Oh, Mabu, 100%. 2. I don't know why, but for some reason I always thought it was 1,000%.
They should have
So what
called
do you guys have to say about it? I haven't watched it because
I think Mob Psycho 1000% would be less awkward than Mob Psycho 100 and then Roman numeral 2. But anyway, so basically the staff of the first season came together for this one. So, it's just as good as the first one in terms of like there's no contest between Mob and anything else from this season and anything else from the season before that in terms of like the charisma of its animation and design work. Like just on a purely visual level, this thing is fucking awesome. I think the first season though kind of like it started out really strong and then like toward the end it started getting a bit repetitive because they were doing it's from the creator of One Punch Man, right? But Mob is about it kind of like takes the concept of One Punch Man and puts it in a more dramatic context of like this boy who doesn't want these godlike psychic powers, but he has them anyway. And, it's about like him growing up and living with these amazing powers that he doesn't want to use. So it's like it can be a very good coming of age drama sometimes. But like